Hello, hello out there. Can we all take a seat, please? If everyone can take a seat, we can get the meeting started. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the January 16th Planning Commission meeting. All members are present, so let the record reflect so. At this time, if you'd stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mayor Bryant to administer the oath of office and swear in the commissioners.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. If I could have Chair Roberts come, and also Mr. Gerald Johnson. It will be Mr. until after the oath. Once you're sworn in, then you get to be sworn at, and so it's one of the joys of the office. But it's worth it. It really is. I want to thank both of you very much for your willingness to participate in leading our community into the future. The job that you do cannot be overstated in the care, the sacrifice, and oftentimes the difficulty that goes into making these decisions. But you're the reason that our families are going to be happy to live here 50 years down the road. So thank you. So if you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
Gerald Johnson,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations and thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Okay. At this time, the commission will now entertain nominations and motions for chairperson, followed by nominations and motions for vice chair. Each motion will include a separate roll call vote. The commission will now entertain nominations and motions for 2 members to serve on the, let's just get one out of the way first. Okay,
Chair Robert,
yes,
I'd like to offer a nomination.
please.
I'm pleased to nominate Chair Roberts for another term as Chair of the Planning Commission.
I'll second.
Oh, Lord. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to enter a motion for vice chair. I would like to make a motion that Mr. Spaulding remain vice chair.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. Okay. That's easy. Okay. Now the commission will entertain nominations and motions for 2 members to serve on the Design Review Subcommittee, followed by nominations and motions for 1 member to serve on the Transplant Committee. Each motion will include a separate roll call vote. Commissioner Floyd?
If somebody would like to nominate me, I'd be happy to stay on the Design Review Committee.
I nominate Commissioner Floor to participate in the design subcommittee.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. And I need a member for Transplant, a motion for that? Pardon me. Okay, so,
Does anybody want to be on it?
what's
So,
this young man's name?
Commissioner,
Commissioner Johnson. I think this would be
I will go on the
good for him.
design committee if someone wants to nominate.
I think
Nominate Commissioner Johnson for the Design Review Committee.
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And Transplant. I nominate Commissioner Brand.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries. Okay. I guess I will keep my seat. Okey
Let that
dokey.
be on record that that's the fastest 3 agenda items ever.
Yeah, let's see if we can get through the rest of them that way. Okay. All right, very good. Pursuant to council and administrative policy, meeting rules and procedures, section 5.2, decorum generally public, comments by members of the public are generally limited to 5 minutes or less if a larger number of speakers is anticipated, or if approved by the chair. Speakers desiring answers to questions should direct them to the Planning Commission, and if relevant, they may direct them to the appropriate staff member. Speakers can also follow up directly with the staff during regular city business hours. Please file a speaker's card with the administrative secretary on the form provided on the counter at the back of the chambers. During this portion of the meeting, those present in the council chambers are permitted to speak on items that are listed under items not on the agenda during the portion of the meeting. Public comments or scheduled agenda items should wait until that time. Zoom participants during this general public comment period will not be accepted. Please note that the commission's actions are final unless an appeal is filed with the city clerk within 10 business days. Okay.
Through the chair, we have 1 card for public comment. Danny?
First off, I want to congratulate everyone here and Happy New Year. Secondly, and this is just my opinion, anytime anyone doesn't want to be chairperson, they're probably the best person to be in that chair. So congratulations. Although hopefully you'll only keep that seat warm for about 12 months and then you'll be in District 1 as a council person, but that's just me. I had to get it out there. Okay, so for tonight, I have issues regarding one of the agenda items. I believe this issue goes beyond just that agenda item, which is why I'm saying it right now. And it has to do with the housing element. The Furthering Fair Housing, or AFFH, which is on page 70, specifically. Although the city can point out disparities between segregated and integrated communities, which is in there, the ultimate responsibility lies with the developer. There are many laws that are on the books that in theory encourage sellers to allow equal opportunities for anyone to purchase. But as you know, the city or any government agency can't proactively mitigate inequity. If you look at our current developers, and again, I'm talking in broad terms, not specific item, you look at Trilogy, Kindred, as just two, there are already workarounds for segregation, specifically age. If one were to review the latest data, census data, with the exception of Kindred, because that hasn't been there full 10 years, you'll see disparities between race, financial status, and age, specifically at Trilogy. So when you talk about the 4 points that are part of the AFFH, points 1 and 4 can be diminished to suit a community. Points 2 and 3 already have a term. It's called gentrification. I believe our commission needs to have staff flesh out all 4 points and maybe even again. Compare that and the result that have been addressed in the Fair Housing Act of 1968. And each development in Brentwood since 1968 has fallen under that act. But you still have what we have. So I would suggest that we get answers to the repealing of anything that is under your purview. Does it truly meet the statements of basic appendices? If it does, then I believe we need clear examples of how the repeal benefits the city. There's no rush. Yes, it's a state mandate, but I'm thinking if the state wanted to sue us, oh, okay. Otherwise, we should take our time and methodically look and make sure that whatever we do is in the best interest of the city. In what I read in that almost opus of the agenda, I didn't see anything that clearly defined what the points I brought up in general. So my suggestion is to have staff go back and give specific reasons why they approved what they approved in the agenda. And not just, oh, because the state said so. And it's, no, the state may say so, but the state will have to come down and sue us if they really want to enforce. That's it. Congratulations. And Mr. Sparling, yeah, I'll take $5 on me keeping my composure through March. Thank you.
Through the chair, at this time, I have no other cards from anyone in the audience.
Okay, thank you. At this time, our next item is the consent calendar. There is one set of minutes for the regular meeting on December 5th. Is there any discussion, or do I have a motion with the exception of Commissioner Johnson, who will not be voting because he wasn't here? I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, and well, at this time, we are going to go into our public hearings. And I believe that the first item on the agenda, H1, is a conditional use permit and design review for the Lone Tree Way commercial speculative building. And I look forward to hearing from Mr. Miguel Contreras.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. Good evening to the commission. Good evening to members of the public. Miguel Contreras, here to present Lone Tree Way Speculative Building, which is application CUP 23-002 and design review 23-002. This application is located at 7740 Lone Tree Way. It is within the Lone Tree Center, which is where the Winco is located. It is PD 38, sub-area F, and it has a general commercial, general plan land use designation. The specific request is approval for a new 661 square foot shell building, which is going to be a excuse me, which will have multi-tenant spaces. With the one tenant space, the one located in the easternmost section of the building, will have a drive-through feature. Design review site. So the project will have a shared access and parking through a shared access and parking agreement that's been established with the Greater Lone Tree Center. Both projects have the same property owner. Access to the site itself will be through the Lone Tree Center, and folks wanting to visit the site would get off of Lone Tree Way via two of the entrances to the Lone Tree Center and then circulate onto the site. Parking. And the project proposes 11 parking stalls. The calculation itself for the 6,061 square foot tenant building would be around 32 spaces. However, since there is a shared parking agreement, the project can provide 11 spaces and still have enough parking for the entire site, including the vacant lot that's next to Winco that's factored into this calculation. And then there will also be a trellis proposed in front of the easternmost tenant building. This trellis would be the same type that is scattered throughout the Greater Lone Tree Center. The drive-through component. So there is a CUP required for the drive-through component, which is part of this application. The drive-through itself would be 2 lanes and would have a capacity for 24 vehicles. It would be screened by a vegetated green screen on the Lone Tree frontage. The applicant's proposing 1 window on the far east side of the building, and the applicant's also proposing 2 speaker boxes situated around the midwestern portion of the drive-through area. Landscaping. The application, the preliminary landscaping plan proposes 15 trees in total for the entire site. These would be 24-inch trees. 25% of the site would be landscaped as proposed. The retention area would be located on the eastern portion of the property. And the trellis would be vegetated, just like the other trellises that are within the Lone Tree Center. architecture. So the building incorporates painted stucco. That's typical of the rest of the buildings within the Lone Tree Center. And same thing with the 4-foot metal awnings. Same thing, they are scattered throughout the greater Lone Tree Center. The roof incorporates a shed, parapet, and gable forms, and that's to break the massing and break the roof line. And all mechanical equipment would be at least 2.5 feet below the parapet height, so there's no way you'd be able to see it from any vantage point since it's below the parapet. And once more, the roof breaks and variations also follow suit with the greater Lone Tree Center. Peer review. So this application was forwarded to Canon Design Groups for architectural peer review. The architectural consultant did have around 8 comments and recommendations. The applicant incorporated a few into the project, but not all of them. And I could get into specifics if there's any questions after the presentation. Conditional use permit. So the drive-through tenant is proposing to open 7 days a week from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. They propose 5 employees maximum. It would be the easternmost tenant space. Only one drive-through tenant would be allowed, and that's all that's being proposed. And the drive-through features, they must not interfere, or they're conditioned to not interfere with Lone Tree Way traffic. So in the event that traffic backs up onto Lone Tree Way, the city does have the ability through the community development director to bring the project back to the Planning Commission for re-review. Also, another condition is that the applicant must receive prior approval from the community development director and the director of engineering to for placement of any speaker boxes if the applicant chooses to place speaker boxes. The drive-through window is also conditioned to be located on the easternmost side of the building. So it can't be on the south side or any closer to the west side. It has to be on the easternmost portion of the building, and this is to allow the most traffic in the drive-through lane. Consistency. So the project is consistent with the regional commercial general plan land use designation. It's also consistent with the PD 38 subarea F zoning district. And the project does qualify as a Class 32 categorical exemption under CEQA, which is for infill developments. Staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission is to adopt as conditioned Resolution 24-01 approving conditional use permit number 23-02. And staff further recommends that the Planning Commission adopt as conditioned Resolution 24-02 approving design review number 23-002. That would conclude staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Contreras. The Planning Commission have any clarifying questions for staff? Commissioner Spaulding.
So there's a tenant for the eastern part of the building, correct? Where that's going to be using the drive-through, correct?
There will be a tenant. The applicant did not give me the name of the tenant. And I believe it's because they were solidifying their contracts and it wasn't a 100% sure thing when the application was submitted through the process. However, the applicant did clarify that the tenant would be a Dutch Bros. And the applicant also did clarify that he could speak on that tonight.
Okay. Yeah, we'll wait to see what the applicant has to say about it because I'm a little, well, I won't say that because we're clarifying questions, but the peer review for the colors of the buildings was different than what the final design was.
Correct.
Do we know why the applicant has, I'm assuming you've discussed that with him. Is the applicant going to speak on that as well tonight?
The applicant would certainly speak on that tonight. I advised them that this question would definitely come up as to why all of the consultants' recommendations weren't adhered to. So the applicant should be prepared to speak on that.
And will this is for the applicant, so you're going to get this question is, so there's going to be speaker boxes. Is there also going to be employees out in the drive-through?
So the application itself comes in as a speculative use. So at this point, the applicant is requesting speaker boxes, and that's going to be dependent on the tenant. I presume that, and the applicant can speak to this, but Dutch Bros doesn't typically use speaker boxes. They typically have people outside. I think that the speaker box request is down the line, 10 years from now or what have you, they decide to get a new tenant that does want speaker boxes. The speaker boxes have already gone and been vetted through this conditional use permit. And there wouldn't be a need to bring the project back to the planning commission to approve solely for the speaker boxes. And that's why we added the condition that the community development director and the director of engineering need to review and vet and approve the location of the speaker boxes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Floyd?
Thank you, Chair Roberts. Just out of curiosity, why is there an extra lane over by the window? Is that so people can drive around and get out, or?
Yes, that's one of the questions I had initially when I saw the project, and yes, that's the purpose of it. In case their order gets fulfilled first and you don't have to wait for the car in front of you to leave, you could just drive around them.
And somebody would come out and give it to them?
Correct.
I see, thank you. I had a quick question about the fence height. I just want to clarify because in the diagram of the fence, it's over on the landscape page, it shows that the fence height is 4 feet, but then underneath on the legend, it says it's 10 by 12 or something like that. So just to be clear, the fence height as designed is 4 feet?
Correct, 4 feet.
Okay. I was kind of curious about the bike rack being placed where it is behind the garbage enclosure. It looks like not a very convenient place to pull up in a bicycle. You have to drag it over a curb one way or the other to get your bicycle up there. I just was wondering if is that what we normally do with a bike rack?
No, staff would certainly recommend that the bike rack be placed in a more centralized location. This was communicated to the applicant. However, there really isn't a requirement that would allow me to, make the applicant move it. But I believe it might be able to be a condition of approval.
All right. And one last question. The EV parking, we calculate 4 needed spots. Is that based on the 11 parking spaces that we're giving them, or the 31, or where is that calculated?
It's calculated off the 31, what the building would require.
And those are level 2 chargers?
That I'm not exactly sure. I would defer that question to our applicant.
All right, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Brand?
Just real quick, as far as the, I walked the property today and I noticed that there was a elevation change between the sidewalk adjacent to Lone Tree, and essentially it's about, I would call it 2.5, 3 feet difference. Is the intended, as what I'm looking at here as far as the map, is that intended to be at the lower elevation, or is it going to be flush with the higher elevation of the, I don't know.
That's a great question, yeah. So I believe that currently the elevation would sit 4 feet below Lone Tree Way. The project plans, and I confirmed with the applicant, that there will be fill brought in to raise the pad, where the finished floor of the building itself would be level with Lone Tree Way at 100 feet above elevation.
Okay, so so from the sidewalk all the way over, it'll be at Lone Tree's elevation.
There will be a slight slope, and that's to meet the county C3 requirements for water.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Johnson?
The only question I had was about simplifying the electrical room that was recommended by Mr. Cannon and was not adopted by the applicant. Do you know why?
There wasn't a specific reason why the applicant, the applicant didn't give me a specific reason why it wasn't adopted. The applicant is here to clarify that question.
What was Mr. Cannon's reason for, behind simplifying the electrical room? Is there was something that might cause a fire, or what was the reasoning behind his recommendation?
What Mr. Cannon had said is that it's too ornate for a, that's what I understood from it, is that it's too ornate to be just the entrance to an electrical room. So it has like a really faux aesthetic to it that perhaps could be simplified to, so that that is an electrical room and not another entrance.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. At this time, the public is permitted to address, but I'll ask the applicant to first come forward and perhaps have a conversation with us. I see you've been here before.
Once or twice.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairperson Roberts and Planning Commission. Congratulations, Commissioner Johnson, on your new appointment. It's going to be a fun ride. My name is Lance Cornell. I'm with SDG Architects. I'm representing the applicant, Paul Martin, on the architectural side, and I'm here to answer any questions. I want to thank Miguel for his tutelage and stewardship of this project and getting it through the iterations. And I know there's a few questions about design, circulation, architecture. Happy to address those questions right now.
Commissioner Floyd?
Sure, about the bike rack, I guess. Is that the best place that we could find to put it? And do we have a diagram that can be put out?
Yeah, if you put the site plan up, I can kind of point. The short answer is that's the most convenient location available that meets all of the accessibility requirements for the bike rack. If you look at I don't know if Miguel can put that on the screen.
April.
But we are happy to entertain options.
April, can you put my screen up?
So where it's located right now, it's just behind the trashing closure on the west side of the property. On the east side of the property, that's where the drive-through tenant is proposed. And in that area, we had worked with staff on making that a decorative area with decorative paving, with a trellis, and with additional landscaping. So that just left the west side of the site available for a bike rack. It provides coverage and visibility. It is visible to the western tenants there, as well as the people entering the Lone Tree Plaza or shopping center on the far west side there, going through the drive-through.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was whether those are going to be level 2 chargers or if it's just infrastructure for now.
I believe so. That'll be determined in the design development and CD phase, but they will be currently whatever the current level is now, but level 2 is what we've had spec'd initially.
Yeah, level 2 is the slow, but I was wondering if there's going to be DC fast chargers there.
I do not know the answer at this time.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Spaulding?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The peer review architect for the coloring, I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear your answer on, now that I know who the tenant is going to be for the east entrance, because the coloring of the building is different.
Yes.
And different than most of the rest of that entire area is more uniform, I guess is a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be different, but
Yes.
can you explain to me why it's going to be different?
Yes, sir. So this is a branding color prescribed by Dutch Bros. So we incorporated that as the anchor tenant for this space here. And for the reasons that Miguel had provided, we were not sure exactly who the tenant was going to be until very late in the process. it is proposed as a speculative building because of that. We don't know leases until they're signed, so it was no secret to anybody. It was just we were trying to work through the process, and staff and Miguel in particular have been very helpful in kind of guiding us through that process.
Okay, thank you. That's right. I assumed.
Yep.
When I saw the drawing and the size of the drive-through, I figured it was one of 3 drive-through businesses, and 2 are already going on that street. So I thought that might be the one. But
Exactly.
so the question is the plan to have, and you may, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this or not, is the plan to have, every Dutch Bros I've been to is they don't use a speaker box. They have employees out there taking orders through with an iPad or what have you. So you're asking for speaker boxes to be put in.
Yeah, we wanted to provide the provision, and the staff has provided us the pathway to have speaker boxes if in some future point we wanted to have them or needed to have them, that we would run them through the proper channels, through the community development director and through engineering for their review. However, Dutch Bros does not operate that way. They have iPads or some handheld device, and one of their core values is speed. And if anybody's been to the Dutch Bros here in town already, they'll come out there and they'll greet you. They'll take your order at your car. They'll deliver your drinks if they're ready in time. The double drive-through allows for bypassing so that there's great throughput for these orders. And the addition of the second location would diffuse the need, but also meet the market demand for this great coffee.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
Commissioner Johnson?
You lucked out today because I don't have any additional questions for you at this time.
Commissioner Johnson.
But don't come back and see me, all right?
Absolutely.
No, I'm teasing.
Believe me, that I'll be here again.
Okay. Commissioner Brandt?
Good evening. In looking at the pedestrian layout, and this particular shopping center has great access.
Yep.
In a essentially all the way up to Winco and back and around, even over. What's the business on the far left side? I forget, but I know one of the call-outs was the sort of cobblestone, particularly on the west side as it goes over Giannini Ranch Road and sort of eastward towards eastward on Lone Tree. The northern pedestrian road, I didn't see, or pedestrian path, excuse me, leading away from there. I didn't see any similar modification from a cobblestone style. I saw that one as left out. I don't know, I might have missed it, but just from and now that we know that it's a proposed Dutch Bros,
yeah.
I imagine that the foot traffic through that area when overflow parking and such. Maybe you can provide me
I can
context.
probably answer your question in more of a broader stroke. This is the last tenant space within this development, commercial development, and it will be designed to fit as if it was always there. So it'll have the same hardscape treatments. The landscape obviously will be new, but the connectivity and the architecture and in the hardscape will all be congruent with everything around it. One thing in particular I may add is that the trellis that we added to the project as a part of the comments and recommendations is going to be very, very similar to what's already there. So there's a number of trellises that have vines on them, and there'll be an additional one in the decorative area just outside our building. And so the pathways connecting to everything will also be decorative in the same manner that everything else is.
Understood. I think it's just highlighting the access for pedestrians is critical in such a high-paced. I mean, I've frequented the Dutch Bros on Brentwood Boulevard many times, and it's quite a operation. But at the same time, I want to make sure that our pedestrians are taken care of. But
absolutely.
Yeah, that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. The landowner, also Paul Martin, is here too if you had any questions on operations or ownership.
Okay, well, we'll hold your time, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, at this time, we'll entertain any public comments. Open it up to a public hearing. At this time, the public is permitted to address the planning commission. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes per person, except for an applicant who can take 10. Does the applicant wish to address? He has. So at this point in time, we'll open it up for public comments.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I have no cards in person. So we'll go over to Zoom. And I currently have no hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, very good. Oh, okay. Well, I would make a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Planning Commission, is there any discussion by the commission on this topic?
Commissioner Flohr, are you comfortable with the bike rack explanation?
I'm actually preferring it over by the trellis, over by the Dutch Brothers, since there's going to be a coffee shop there. It just seems, I mean, I have it up here. I don't think it necessarily has to be unattractive. It's just 3 hoops on a metal thing, and I would just kind of like it someplace that's accessible from the sidewalk, and yeah, we're if somebody did come on a bicycle, I'm going to guess that they're going to come for coffee. So that's just a personal observation that I'm making, though. So I'll defer to the commission on that one.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I understand why it's where it is, but we don't know. Hopefully, Patty is filled right away and there'll be a business there. But right now, Dutch Bros would be by itself, and the bike rack is on the other side, and potentially not visible to the folks that are, if they happen to go inside. Now, Dutch Bros, from my experience, it's not, people are driving through. They're not really sitting and having coffee like other brands. But this is a little bit different space than I've seen Dutch Bros use before. So I'm not sure where the best place to put it is. And I don't like designing from the dice. So I think it would be something that my personal opinion would be, if there's enough support to work with staff to move it, that we let staff work with the developer to find a better place for it that is visible from the Dutch Bros tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like to move it. Is there any other support on the commission?
I mean, I concur, but I do have do you have priorities for its placement? Not necessarily where, but some whys, so that it can maybe help direct staff that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I have some ideas for that. We can kick it around with formulation.
Just out of curiosity, there was mention of moving the reason why they put the bike rack in there in the first place was, I don't recall the reason why, but I thought it was some conditional reason why he put it there in the first place. So does moving it hinder any of those issues or change anything?
I think so.
We could talk to the applicant again.
Yeah.
I thought, I got the impression it was just kind of where they had room to put it, because they couldn't, they had to go to one side or the other, and they've got the trellis on the other side, and they felt like it wasn't.
And there's room. I
consistent.
see that there's room in some spots here where that could be relocated.
Or any other, is that the only concern? I mean, my questions were answered, but before we ask the applicant to come up and maybe address this, maybe there's any other concerns?
I did want to address the fence height, the screening fence for the drive-through. It's at 4 feet, and I think if we don't raise it to 6 feet, we'll just, what's going to happen. So I would just propose, making it 6.
6 foot fence?
Yeah, just to screen the cars. So I'm just talking about the one that's it's basically it's a a grid fence. It's just like this little grid that they're going to grow plants on. So it's a planter, and I just like to see it a little bit taller to screen the vehicles. I mean, I drive a pretty short car, and my car is more than 4 feet tall. So I just think if we went that was 6 foot, it would probably do a better job of doing its job, but it still wouldn't be too high to detract from, you know, the look of the building.
Commissioner Spaulding?
I would say the 4 feet is fine, given, I think normally when we've asked for more shielding, it's been because of the location of the area.
Right.
This is on Lone Tree. This is a commercial area. There are cars going in and out of that area all the time. The flow of the area is already set up very well. So I think a higher fence would actually detract from the building, the design of the building, as well as the trees and vegetation, other things. I think 6 feet certainly is too high. I mean, I think 4 feet is high given the location of it, but.
You know, I'm in that area quite a bit. And I usually enter in on the side where the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. The one thing that I noticed, and I know we haven't spoken about this, but the one thing that I notice is when you exit out of that parking lot, left onto Lone Tree, there's a lot of traffic that's coming in from from Winco. Not so much from this area that we are addressing. And on the other side, where Five Boys is, there's a lot of traffic. Oftentimes, you've got to wait a little while before you can take that left turn. There are other ways of getting out to Lone Tree, but most folks exit out and take that left and go right or left onto Lone Tree. So I think my only concern, having not spoken earlier, with this drive-through, which I think is a great idea, is now we've got more traffic that more than likely is going to present more congestion coming off that main strip that folks use to come in and out of Winco. I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to manage that. How do we manage that so that that doesn't become an issue for folks, if you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Yeah, I have to echo that as well, because we know Dutch Bro's popularity or some type of drive-through coffee establishment, and the natural. In looking at this flow, the natural flow is going to go towards Giannini Ranch here, and that's how the predominant population enters and exits, and particularly in this case enters. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to address any overflow from this 24-car drive-through to prevent spillage out. I'm obviously open to possibilities, but that is an issue. I don't know if there's any negotiation as far as like alleviation on parking, maybe, because that lot that's directly north is rarely 25% full. It's
true.
It's almost always empty, and there's a
True.
number of businesses, the cleaners, the O'Reillys, all of that there. It's pretty busy, but it's typically empty. I don't know if there's something we could do to maybe give and take a little bit to so everybody wins here. But yeah, to your point, Chair Roberts.
It is typically pretty empty. I frequent, like I'm in that area probably 3-4 times a week. And again, I'm wondering if that entrance alongside a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a possible way to exit from that drive-through, because it's going to get really,
Chair Roberts,
yes.
they're already using that exit. So if you, well, I can't flip my screen around.
I see it.
But they have you going to the right and out that side exit. And I actually didn't think that was ideal because it does force you to turn right there. There's no way to turn left, but it does at least keep them a little bit away from the light. They'll be dumping out, and then they'll be going, the half a block up to the light, but at least they won't be going back through the Winco parking lot.
Okay.
or anything.
So it won't be, they won't be exiting out of that main area that most folks use going in and out of Winco. They'll be coming along that Brazilian
it's
jiu-jitsu
it's
side.
actually on the illustration. If,
Yeah, page 43
wish
is
I could share
the
my
flow
screen,
maps.
Yeah, yeah.
So you'll have to take a right out of the drive-through and then a right. If you're leaving, you have to go right out. So, and then in theory, if you're going to go back into the parking lot, you'd have to take a left at that stop.
Got you.
If you continue on to Lone Tree, it's a right-only exit, and then you'd have to either go up to do a U-turn or out. So all the traffic is not going to go through the main part of the entrance into where I think typically what you're talking about is into the Winco area of the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why when I made the comment earlier about the flow, I think the flow makes sense the way it's set up to not detract from the current tenants and customers, because this will be this certainly will be more traffic to the area, but I think the way it's set up in terms of flow, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay. All right.
I just want to add 2 cents to that. Unfortunately, that lane, the northernmost lane of Lone Tree there is a dedicated right turn lane. So if you're exiting from that eastern entrance, it's a solid white the whole way through to the Giannini Ranch right turn. And so it, as you described, trying to do a U-turn there, it means that not only you have to cross a solid white, but then you have to cross a couple lanes of traffic in a lickety split. So just want to make sure.
You'll have to go up until you can make a U-turn. So, which is further up Lone Tree.
So that first
Right.
stop sign, I think you can turn left there or not.
No, we're talking about the far eastern one.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a right turn only, but what about this one? Can they turn left and go back up through the parking lot?
You can.
You could turn left and go
okay.
back up into the parking lot.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. People will miss doing it, but hopefully it's, if they're doing their coffee habit every day, they'll get used to it.
I mean, if where there are potential challenges with the flow is inevitably someone is not going to want to take a right out of the drive-through lane, but that's nothing that we can control. So
I did have another concern about just the entrance being 2 lanes like that. So I guess the cars have to pick a lane coming in and then take turns when they get up to where they got to turn around the front of the building. That'll probably work out okay, I suppose. Just looks kind of strange.
Isn't that like McDonald's, the way McDonald's has their speaker box? 2 lanes come in and then they alternate?
Possibly. I don't use drive-throughs at all, so.
yeah,
That's why it looks a little
it
different.
works. It works.
All right.
They usually have people directing which lane to go to as well to suffice, ordering speeds and stuff like that. So
Dutch Bros actually sometimes has 2 lanes all the way through. This is a little bit different.
That said, what are we going to do about the bike rack?
Can we have the applicant come back up and?
Mr. Applicant, would you come back up, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Paul Martin. When I was a much younger man, I built that shopping center in 2003, and this is the last parcel to go. And thank you very much for hearing this tonight. Happy to work with staff to locate the bike rack to wherever we can come to an agreement as to the
Great.
best spot for it. So that's no problem.
Okay.
And then if you have any further questions about the shopping center or anything that went on out there, I'm here and I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners? I
Well,
think we're good.
did we fully cover the fence height? I know that Vice Chair Sparling and I have differing opinions on it. I'm curious how the rest.
I think 4 feet is fine. I'm good with 4 feet.
I'm good with 4 feet.
All right, that's fine with me then.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for indulging us.
Well, thank you for indulging me. We're looking forward to doing this project.
All
And
right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. At this time, I will ask for a motion. Unless contrary or amended, I would like someone to make a motion to
Yep.
adopt this resolution or not.
Yep, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 24-001, approving a conditional use permit as further detailed in the staff report.
I'll second.
With a conversation regarding the bike rack, correct?
Commissioner Flores is correct. That would happen in the design review
Okay.
resolution, and we have some suggested language for you to consider when you get there.
Okay, good. So I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. I also am looking for a motion on the design review.
I'm ready to make a motion, but I want to see the
Yeah.
recommended language.
Thank you, Commissioner Flora. April's going to share my screen in just a minute, and you'll be able to have a look at the revised language for your consideration. So your existing design review resolution already includes a condition requiring the applicant to adhere to the plan, substantially adhere to the plans. This would give a little bit of leeway for the applicant to work with staff to move those bike racks to a location that's both more visible and more convenient per the Planning Commission's direction. If this works for you, then staff can use this. If you want modifications, please let us know.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-002, approving a design review as further detailed in the staff report and as modified on the screen in front of us for item 3 to relocate the bike rack.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Okay. All right, very good. We're going to move on to some administrative ordinance stuff. An application for the general plan amendment, GPA 24001, to repeal the March 2023 housing element and adopt the city's housing element update for the periods of 2023 to 2031 cycle. We will now hear a presentation from Senior Planner Jennifer Hagan on agenda item H2, which is a public hearing for a general plan amendment to adopt the city's housing element update for the 6th cycle in compliance with the state housing element law.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. Tonight, we're here to consider a general plan amendment to adopt our final housing element for 2023 to 2031, our 6th cycle. Instrumental in getting the city to this point has been our consultant team from Kimley Horn. Tonight's presentation will be given to you by Inez Gamish, our project manager from Kimley Horn, who has joined us tonight via Zoom. Do we have Inez on? Okay. Are we sharing my screen or hers? Okay. Inez, did you want to share your screen?
I can share my screen. Yes. Give me just a moment.
There. Then we can have you flip through the slides a little easier.
Perfect.
There you go.
Is the presentation showing?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. All right. Well, good evening, Chair Roberts and Planning Commission. We were last before you almost a year ago for the first adoption of the 6 cycle housing elements. And following continued work with HCD, we are back with an HCD approved housing element for readoption tonight. So the purpose of this meeting is to review and consider an amendment to the general plan to readopt the housing elements following approval from HCD. And the motion recommendation is to adopt a resolution recommending the City Council to approve a general plan amendment to repeal the current housing element adopted back in March 2023 and adopt the updated housing elements for the 2023 to 2031 planning period in compliance with state law and as approved by HCD. So now, stepping back for a moment, I will walk us through the sections of the housing element as a refresher since it's been a little while. And I'll also go over key dates since we were last before you. So the housing element is made up of 4 main sections and 4 appendices. The first section is an introduction, and it's followed by the community profile, which serves as the baseline of the document. It assesses community demographics and existing housing stock to identify any potential gaps in housing need, particularly for special housing needs groups. Section 3 analyzes 3 things. The first is potential constraints to housing development. Second is resources available to Brentwood households and for housing development. And the third is the newest requirement, which is an assessment of fair housing. This section seeks to identify any potential roadblocks to housing development or access to housing because of the market, city practices, or environmental or other outside factors. What we call AFFH, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, assesses past practices that may have contributed to certain populations not being able to access affordable housing. And it also compares fair housing data and findings to the location of the candidate housing sites, so as to provide for future development in areas of high resource. Now, section 4, the housing plan, is arguably the most important section of the document, as it establishes the goals, the policies, and the programs to address findings established within the housing element and the various strategies to meet the city's RHNA, which we'll go over in a few slides. And the housing plan essentially lays out the groundwork for what the city will be doing throughout the entirety of the planning period. The city reports on the status of those programs annually to HCD through the annual progress reports. Next are the appendices. We first start with Appendix A, which provides a summary of everything that was accomplished by the city throughout the 5th cycle based on the programs that were established in the past housing element. Appendix B outlines the strategies to meet RHNA and the specific sites anticipated to develop throughout the planning cycle, and we'll go over those strategies in the next slide. And the housing element concludes with the summary of all the community engagement conducted throughout the entirety of the update process, as well as a glossary of housing terms. For the 6th planning cycle, the city of Brentwood was allocated a total of 1,522 RHNA units to plan for. So as you see in the table, the city is able to accommodate this amount through projects currently in the pipeline, through projected ADU development based on past trends, through units planned in PA1, as well as on vacant land currently zoned for residential use. Through these 4 strategies, the city can meet the entirety of the RHNA plus a buffer without needing to adopt any rezones. And these strategies and unit totals have not changed since they were adopted by City Council on March 14th, 2023. Now, the housing element was first adopted by City Council on March 14th, 2023. On August 8th, staff came back to Council to present proposed policy and program edits based on continued coordination with HCD. Council approved of those updates and instructed staff to ensure the next submittal to HCD would be the final one. And after that meeting, staff continued to coordinate with the state, and on November 3rd, submitted the revised adopted housing elements for review. And recently, on January 2nd of this year, HCD reported that the city had met all statutory requirements with that November submission and would receive certification once the document was readopted and then resubmitted to HCD. This is a major milestone and an achievement that we've been working towards since the start of the update process in early 2022. So now to go over some of those revisions. We have made minor edits throughout the document, mostly to Section 3 and Appendix B to supplement existing analysis and add additional background information per conversations and coordinations with HCD. Major edits were made to Section 4 to the housing plan with the addition of new programs as were approved by City Council in August. And so we'll go over those 5 new programs in the next slides. So the first was the addition of action H.1R to adopt a zoning code update for multifamily unit parking requirements. This includes requiring 1.5 parking spaces for 1-bedroom units and 0.5 spaces for studio units. Action H.1S was also added to adopt a zoning code update to remove subjectivity in application findings for CUPs, as well as design and site development reviews. Action H.1T was also added to remove discretion or constraints, such as requiring the exercise of transferable agricultural credits, significant added amenities, extensive off-site public improvements, or other significant improvements for projects requesting densities above the midpoint for all residential land use categories. Action H.20 was also added to continue city representation in the East Contra Costa Regional Fee and Financing Authority, and to continue advocating for reductions to the regional fee for higher density residential uses that are near major transit stops, as well as affordable housing developments. And lastly, the existing action H.4a was updated following further supplemental analysis to include new actions to address racially concentrated areas of affluence and expand housing opportunities in those areas. New community revitalization actions that were based on projects that are listed in the city's adopted capital improvement plan. New actions to expand access and information for special needs populations. Updates to geographic targets and discrete timeframes. Added language for more specific actions and examples of those actions and potential incentives. And lastly, the addition of quantified goals. So with that said, the last remaining step is now to simply send HCD the readopted housing element to then receive official certification. And so with that, as I mentioned in the beginning, the recommendation before you tonight is to adopt the resolution recommending the City Council approve a general plan amendment to repeal the current housing elements adopted in March 2023 and adopt the updated housing elements in compliance with state law and as approved by HCD. And with that, that concludes our presentation. We are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for staff? Commissioner Floyd?
Yes, I'd like to go back to the midpoint. I wasn't really clear after reading it, and there's been a lot of discussion around the city about the midpoint. Do we still have a midpoint, or is this a de facto rezone to where we now just have the minimum zoning as the zoning?
So right now, our current general plan has density ranges for all of our densities. single-family and multifamily zones. It has a minimum and a maximum. The midpoint was applicable to single-family and medium-family residential zones, and it was a policy that required projects that go above the middle range of that minimum and maximum to provide additional public benefits to the city. Based on HCD's analysis, having the requirement to have additional public benefit to go over a point that's already within the allowable range was considered a constraint for housing development. So HCD is requiring us to remove all mention of any added additional benefits to go above the midpoint. So as long as a development comes in that is within the minimum and the maximum range of the allowable density within that general plan and zoning, then we should review it against all other objective design standards and guidelines within our zoning code.
So there's zero enforcement for midpoints anymore.
That is correct.
So I guess I'm just seeing that as a state enforced rezone of all of our zones, because the midpoint was the zoning, and then you could have, the way I understood midpoints is that the midpoint was represented the size that you needed to get to the number of units, and then you could have some properties would be bigger than the midpoint and some that would be smaller, but they had to average out, so you had as many units as you would get at the midpoint. But now we're saying that, no, they can have as many units as you can get at, the maximum density. Have I got that right?
Right now, the way that the city has been practicing it in accordance with the state law is that as long as an application is within that range, then we cannot have any subjective criteria such as added community benefit. So yes, as long as it is, some might come in at the upper levels of that range and some might come in at the lower levels.
And do we have any objective criteria that we could apply?
We currently have our objective design standards, and then we're currently working on our permanent objective design standards, but those will be applicable to the design and site planning of a project and not the actual density.
All right. Well, thank you. I just thought it was important for the public to understand what is happening to their city as a result of some of these state changes. I do have another question. On page 321, I got the red line this afternoon. Thank you so much for sending it over, and that's a lot of work. I really appreciate it. I did note on page 321, and I don't have a packet page for you, that it mentions that PD zones are optional, and I was having a little trouble with the wording. I think that if there is a PD zone, it's still enforceable, right? But in a new development, it's not required that there be a PD. Is that what that means?
That is correct. The current zoning would stand for all of our existing zoning. So if you have a PD, you would remain in a PD. If you have an R16 zone and you are requesting to modify or deviate from those standards, you could potentially apply for a PD zone. So that's where it would become optional, is if you are applying for a rezone.
All right, thank you. And one more question, just quickly, on page 327, alternative equivalents, I just didn't understand that very well. Can you kind of explain what an alternative equivalent accomplishes or does?
.327 of the
red line.
Of the red line, okay.
3-27, I should say. And again, I apologize I always do this, I put you on the spot. I really apologize for not getting these questions in sooner, but I didn't really see the red line until this morning.
3-27. Okay, so on 3-27, this section is talking about our city's affordable housing program. And so part of HCD's requirement was they had questions on our last affordable housing update in which the city opted to remove the ability to pay in lieu fees for affordable housing. In order to do that under state law, we have to provide alternative equivalents in which developers can provide instead of paying the fee. So as our ordinance is currently written, a developer can either provide the units on site, they can dedicate a vacant land or developable land, they can do off-site construction of for sale or for rent units, they can dedicate affordable units to the city or other means of fulfilling the affordable requirement. So the alternative means really is just reiterating what's already in our code and under our existing affordable housing ordinance.
So we did have that, because my understanding, when I saw the city council make that change, my understanding was they want affordable housing in those neighborhoods. And that was their whole goal of getting rid of the in lieu fee, again, as my understanding, as I was sitting in the audience as a member of the public for that. But you're saying these alternatives were always there, because I saw them as new in the red line. I was just concerned that.
The red line that is in here is it was a new description of what is in our code. It is not new to the code. It is already in our current zoning ordinance, but we did not provide a full analysis in here explaining what was already in our code. And so what HCD had required or requested of us is that we provide additional analysis from our previous version. So what you see in here is just a red line of the city explaining the other alternatives that are already included in our current code.
And there was one of them, and that tracks for me, because one of them, and I can't remember the term off the top of my head, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was where the applicant would basically give the property to the city somehow. What is the term for that?
So there are multiple ones. They have dedication of affordable units.
Yeah. So that's already there, I think,
Correct.
because I've seen that discussed in council. So all right. So that kind of alleviates my concern a little bit, but I still I still feel like the state is really pushing us around here and making us do things. And I really want the public to understand that they're going to see changes. Many of them will not like, and I want them to understand where they're coming from. I really appreciate your time, Jennifer, and I really appreciate you sending over that. It's a great piece of work. Thank you.
Commissioner Brandt?
Not sure if this is for Jennifer, maybe Katie. As far as so we self-certified last year. Now we're going through this process again. Is there any kind of invalidation that's happening as a result of the repeal? I guess that's the word that we're using today, at least in the packet.
Yeah, so we do have a current housing element that is adopted. And so this would not repeal and replace it. They would happen simultaneously at the time of city council adoption. So right now, we currently do have an adopted 2023 to 2031 housing element. HCD did request that we make additional modifications to it, and that's what we are bringing forward with you tonight. And then once we adopt this will just immediately repeal and replace that one. Does that answer your question?
I think so. And then, yeah, and I think it's just clear to the public as far as the line items that were discussed in the staff report or as such, just to demonstrate the difference. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Spaulding?
Commissioner Flora didn't go far enough in saying what the state's doing to the cities and local control, but I might later. Question for you. Can you pull back up the very low income slide in the presentation?
If you could please share my screen. Oh,
Yeah, that one. Thank you. So first, just a process question, right? What happens if we say we reject this tonight?
So tonight, the Planning Commission is making a recommendation to the City Council. So it will be moving forward tonight with either a recommendation of approval or a recommendation of denial. The item would then be heard by the City Council at the next meeting, and the City Council would make the final determination to approve or deny.
And what happens if the city council says no?
If the City Council says no, then our current housing element that was adopted in March 2023 would still remain in place and would be our current housing element.
And what's the impact with the state to that?
The state would not recognize our housing element adopted in March of 2023 as certified.
And what would that allow builders to do?
That could potentially have the impact if we were to be challenged to allow builders to apply for builder's remedy applications.
Which means what?
A builder's remedy application is in essence an SB 330 application in which a developer could apply to construct residential units. Under SB 330, there's a few criteria that allow the city to deny an application. One of them is that it is not in conformance with a current housing element. And so we may not be able to make those findings, or it may be challenged on whether we have a housing element that is in conformance with state law. Could be an argument that could be made. Based on HCD not having our certification.
And has that already happened to other cities?
There have not been any formal builder's remedy applications that have been challenged in a court of law at this time.
Okay. So going back to the slide that's being shown right now, so the RENA allocation just means that these units could be built.
They are planned for, correct?
Planned
There's
for.
zoning that allows for the construction of this number of units.
So I've been on the Planning Commission, now this is my 4th year, and I pay attention to the market in Brentwood. Can someone in Sacramento explain to me how a builder is going to build 402 very low-income units in Brentwood when the smallest house that's been proposed in a non-55 plus costs $800,000 on the market before upgrades? This is so Katie's probably going to jump in here if I go off topic too much, but I think the challenge with this whole housing element is we're being asked to provide a plan for this, but yet builders in Brentwood aren't bringing forth these products. And so how can I vote yes for this, knowing that it's not anything we can control because we don't build homes, builders do, and builders are bringing products forward that are a different market because Brentwood is not San Francisco, it's not Oakland, it's not, name any big city in California. So that's my challenge in terms of, I always think about when I'm voting, right? Get me to a no or get me to a yes, right? And I know by law we have to approve this. I know that, but this is not really an option for us to vote no on, but yet it doesn't solve the housing crisis at all. And I know it's not really a question for you, but.
Yeah, as a clarifying question still of staff, since we have not opened a public hearing, I understand.
So the challenge is what have other cities done to get very low income and low income units built in a market that doesn't support those to be built because they can charge more and build bigger units?
One of the key strategies, although it seems small, is a step that our council has already taken, is to up our inclusionary zoning. Believe it or not, there are many cities in our county that do not have an obligation to require inclusionary units as part of their projects. And so we do require inclusionary units. At this time, it's only 13%. We have opted out of allowing developers to fee out. So at this time, it is a small change in the bucket each development, but right now it is how we are moving forward with trying to get each of these.
Okay, Thank you.
Considering that Vice Commissioner Spalding just stole my question about what happens if we said no, what are have there been any other cities that have voted no that you know of, or not adapted or adopted the state's recommendations?
Not to my knowledge. Right now, I think all of the cities in the area are very, very strongly moving forward to try to adopt and then get their housing elements certified as quickly as possible.
And to Vice Commissioner Spalding's point about how do we ensure that low-income homes are being built, can you just go over that again for the newbie on the block to make sure I understand how we're going to do that?
Yes. This is also related to the next agenda item, so we can definitely go into this more in the next agenda item as well. But right now, our city has two different ordinances and programs that are available for affordable housing. One is our affordable housing ordinance, which requires all developments over 5 units to provide 13% of the number of units at different affordability levels. The next option is a state-regulated option, which is a density bonus provisions, which would require developers to go above and beyond our affordable housing ordinance with at times deeper levels of affordability. And by doing so, developers would then also get additional density above what is within the allowable density range. So those are currently the two avenues that are being used for affordable units in the city.
Thank you.
So I have, it's just my blowing a little steam as well. I think it's a farce. I think that our hands are kind of tied in having to pass something that we know is a real untruth. There's no way in the world that we can enforce, nor is there a instrument in place to enforce the 402 units that are supposed to be earmarked as low income. And because of that, and we already see the evidence of it as it's coming before the commission, it just seems like it's it's undermining our intelligence is what it's doing. There's absolutely no way that a blue-collar worker, teacher, mom, pop store can afford, if built, a $800,000 home, and that's a low number. It just bothers me that we have we've titled this affordable housing, because there's nothing affordable about it. It would have been better said just housing. This whole thing was set up to supposedly move people from the streets into homes, or more importantly, first-time home owners. And the truth of the matter is, it's become impossible. I read real estate articles. California is probably #1 in the country for being unaffordable. And as it relates to what municipalities have said no, there are quite a few of them that have said no in the state of California. What I want everyone to know, including those that are listening, it's very interesting that the courts have not moved on the actual complaints or the no's, for lack of a better word, the no's, because once a determination is made, people are going to follow suit if the determination is in favor of that municipality. So they've got this huge, and I know this for a fact, they've got this huge several municipalities that have brought their argument before the courts, and the courts, for whatever the reasons are, they have not heard them. So we kind of got our hands tied. Again, we can't say no, but we're kind of being told that we have to say yes to something that is riddled with a lot of untruth. And that is very troublesome when it comes to this commission, which holds itself in high integrity. It just pushes us in an area that compromises that. And that bothers me a great deal. Yeah, we can sit here and just pass it on to council and let them be the ones to do it. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's not fair. Because whatever happens, legislature wins. So I appreciate Commissioner Floyd trying to make sure that the community that we're serving here understands that this is not us doing this. When we start seeing shovels to the ground, it's not our doing, it's the legislature doing. And for that, it is very disturbing. And we've had this bantering back and forth all of last year and some of the year before, and it continues. And there's not much we can do about it. That being said, I'll move on.
Chair Roberts.
If I could just jump in for 1 second, Commissioner, I would just like to remind the Commission respectfully that we're in clarifying questions right now. So if you have clarifying questions for staff, please feel free. We're straying a little bit from that, so sorry to interrupt your discussion.
I actually do have a clarifying question. If I may,
Go ahead,
through the
Matt.
chair. And it's for Katie, for the city councilor. I'd like to know, sometimes if the commission decides not to adopt a resolution and would like to do the contrary resolution, there will be a delay while staff goes back and rewrites. I don't want to impose a delay on this process on the city council. It just compresses their timeline, and I want to be respectful because they are the body that has the ultimate decision to make here. So my question is, should the commission, and like I'm hearing some sentiment in both directions, and should the commission decide that they wanted to recommend that city council not approve this, would it be possible to move that forward tonight? Can that be accommodated, or would you need to take it back?
So you have a couple of options. The first of which would be to tell staff the basis for your determination. So this is a general plan amendment. You'll see in your resolution there are findings. You could let staff know what findings you do not agree with. That would be one option. And we could attempt to rework those findings here on the dais so that this can move forward to the city council for their ultimate determination. Another thing you might consider is, I don't know which way you are going to vote because you haven't had your public hearing yet, and that's still very important, so you haven't decided yet. If you decided you ultimately did want to recommend the city council approve it, but you wanted to voice all of your objections and include all of your concerns and say that notwithstanding, we suggest you go ahead and adopt this anyway, staff could take those concerns and include those in the resolution so that they are memorialized, so that the city council could see those, so that the public could see those at the next public hearing. So that would be another way to register the concerns you have and still move forward with the process. And that is what I understand your question to be. Does that help?
Yeah, just as long as we can do whatever we need to get done tonight. I don't, like I said, my concern is if we did for whatever reason decide not to support the resolution, that we could, and I think you've answered the question, that it could conceivably go forward tonight. Because what I don't want to do is not approve the resolution and then wait for another 2 weeks, because that puts another 2 weeks of pressure on city council, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think staff would just be looking to the commission to provide the basis or your findings for your determination, not to recommend approval.
All right, thank you so much.
One clarifying question, I'm not sure, Jennifer, if it is better answered for this discussion or the next agenda item about affordable housing, which are the income requirements for very low and low income, all the way up through moderate for the county. Is that something that you have handy, or is it better suited for the affordable housing discussion?
Your next agenda item is on density bonuses, which touches on those categories specifically. So if you wanted to wait until that time, I'm sure we could pull that information up for that agenda item.
That's fine. Yep.
May I ask a clarifying question? When I was doing this reading, it seemed like this has been going on for quite some time, going to the city council, coming back here, and it's been a process that has been going on for a bit. And so, although when I read it, I was like Vice Commissioner Spalding said, how is this going to happen? I want to know how are we going to derail the process if it's been going on, and the city council has been, pushing it forward for this amount of time? Are we, kind of putting a cog or sand in the wheel or sand in the gears? I got the wrong expression.
I don't know why you're looking at me.
Because that seemed like more of a legal question than anything else, but I'll give you my opinion, is that this is going to city council on the 14th, regardless of what happens tonight.
Okay.
Right, there are some projects that are already set up to go outside of this one as well, that automatically go. This one's already going. We have to vote to approve it or not to approve it with our, if we choose to not approve it or choose to approve it, but with comments, it's going to go forward for the city council to recommend. So is that accurate?
Yeah, the only clarification, if you choose to recommend approval or don't choose to recommend approval, and that's the only clarification I would make. Yes, it is going forward to city council. We just need to know your reasonings behind your decision. So if we need to change those, we can.
Thank you.
At this time, let's open it up for public hearing.
Can we get that thing on the screen? The resolution, so we can.
Open up for public hearing now.
Okay, but I just wanted to know the reasons, so I could. Okay, never mind.
Through the chair, at this time, I have no in-person speaker cards. I do have one hand raised in Zoom, and that is Danny.
All right. I'm assuming everyone can hear. If you don't mind, I have issues with both H2 and H3. I thought it best to address both items now since my argument will be the same. So you can either hear it once or I can hang around and I can say the exact same thing again. But before I begin, for the record, there are no bets between me and Vice Chairman Sparling. So you guys can put your books away. I'm just giving them a hard time. So now, one option that I did not hear with respect to what you do next is continuance. You have questions that don't seem to have an answer. I believe that is what a continuance is for, to get those questions answered. And you should not worry about the council. This is a recommendation. If you agree with the appeal, well, then vote your heart. If you don't agree, because you have unanswered questions or you are not happy about the progress, whatever the case may be, but you vote in the affirmative, well, honestly, with much respect, shame on you. Now, I mentioned in open comments about this earlier. Worried about negative ramifications vis-a-vis being sued if we don't appeal. Um, but as was mentioned, not a single city has had a developer put what basically we want to do to the test. So we're worried about something that may happen, or we're worried about something because we don't have the information in front of us, all of it. That's why my question remains. Did staff adequately address the reasons for the repeal? And I'm speaking for both the questions you asked as well as the ones I had put out there. And as I said, yes, this is what the state wants. And possibly the denial of the repeal is an exercise in futility. And the state may come in and say, do it as we say. However, as I discovered during my plea to reopen all open comments on Zoom, I discovered that staff did not do the proper diligence other than other cities are doing it. This is what I worry about. We have laws on the books. There are laws that tell us what we can, what we can't do. What I've heard tonight did not point to anything specific other than the state. And I think that these need to be addressed. If they can be addressed now and make a decision, great. If you feel, as I heard a couple of you say, that, basically I'm going to hold my nose and vote yes because I have no other choice, I humbly ask that you consider a continuance so that you get whatever questions you need answered. Lastly, I contend that this rush to resolve what was put on by our state, our country, or our city is the predicament we're in because we do this rush. We blame, okay, it's not our fault. We really want to do this, but the state says so. We've never really put it to the test, put a line in the sand and say, give us reasons. If we deny this repeal, give us the consequences of that. No threats, no sending you out in the timeout, nothing. Give us, if you deny this repeal, what happens next? Because we do know what happens if you do repeal it and send it to commission. I appreciate your time, and I'm sure everyone will do the right thing.
The speaker's time has expired. At this time, Chair Roberts, I have no other hands raised.
Okay, this time I'm going to close public hearing. Do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No nays. Motion carries. Is there any discussion by the commissioners on this? Commissioner Floyd.
Yeah, I'm sitting here reading the resolution, and I'm having a hard time agreeing even with the first finding. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just read out loud. And it's basically, I have a lot of objections to this. The amendment is in the public interest in that it will support employment growth, which is not actually true because we don't have enough jobs in Brentwood. And at best, it's going to increase the number of people looking for work. And at worst, with some of the penalties that can be involved, we can be forced to rezone commercial to residential, further impeding our ability to add employment to Brentwood at a time when we desperately need to add employment to Brentwood. Work to address any imbalance in jobs and housing in Brentwood? No. Maybe in San Jose, where they have a lot of jobs and not a lot of housing, but not out here in the suburbs and the exurbs, where we have a lot of housing and not a lot of jobs. Adding housing is going to knock the balance further out of whack. And again, Brentwood is very, very far out of whack when it comes to the jobs housing balance in favor of housing, not in favor of jobs. Reduced urban sprawl and excessive commuting. No, we are urban sprawl. Again, we are the suburbs. We are the thing that they're trying to help. Adding housing in the cities where the jobs are would accomplish these goals, but these goals are not specific to the urban environment. They're trying to do the same thing in the suburbs they're doing in the city, and it's not helping.
Right.
Allow the city to take meaningful steps to promote and affirmatively further fair housing. And again, we just saw we're trying to implement the best fair housing we can, and they're making us water it down. Let's see, what else does it say? The housing element also incorporates the city's goals, quantifiable objectives, and policies to affirmatively further fair housing and the maintenance, preservation, improvement, and development of housing for America. No, it just doesn't. I mean, we can go through this whole document. I'm just at a quandary, and I just want to go ahead and give it to the rest of the commission, because this document has wording that I guess the state would approve of, but these are just not true. And how can I make a recommendation on something that I believe is not true? At the same time, I don't want to, and I appreciate that the caller said we shouldn't be concerned about the city council, but I'm concerned about the welfare of Brentwood and all of our residents and all of our businesses. This is something where you will find we have disagreements around here about how this town should be run here and there, but I think everybody I've talked to feels the same way about this particular issue. And that, I'm not, hopefully I can say that. But I'm just not finding anything in here. I mean, we can just keep going through it. But I just, as I read the findings, and I had the same problem when I read them the first time, I just have trouble finding anything that I could put my name on and say, yeah, I agree with this, because I really don't. I just, I'm stuck. I think I'm just gonna let the rest of the commission talk about it for a while, because I'm frustrated.
Join the club. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm good. I see the predicament we're in, and I understand it. And so I don't have any further comments on this point in time.
Commissioner Sabali?
So I think policy that's made on bad data is just bad policy. And that's really the summary of what we're being forced to do. There's been a ton of work. I disagree with the caller about this has been rushed. It's not been rushed. There's been a ton of work by staff and consultants, which I appreciate. And you're being asked to do this, and you may or may not agree with that. We'll never know your true opinions because you can't sway it that way. But I think I look at, this one size fit all approach to a state that is as large as many nations in terms of housing. And this will not solve the housing crisis, and I would challenge whether we have a housing crisis. We have an affordable crisis of housing. There's plenty of housing available, and if you want to look at how many short-term rentals are now off the market for housing, that's a better way to actually, if you're truly interested in solving the housing affordability issue, that's how you address it. Commissioner Floor is right about, 2A, the amendment doesn't do any of that for Brentwood. It may for other cities. And I grew up in Millbrae, and if you're not familiar with Millbrae, it's right by the airport. And this is actually perfect for a city like Millbrae, which is in the intersection of the San Francisco and which is a job market, South San Francisco, which is a job market, and then down to the peninsula. And there's also a BART station right in the middle of it that stopped. There's a BART stop there. They are building housing units right next to mass transit, which is what which is the intent of what Sacramento's trying to do, but for cities like Brentwood, this is terrible. We don't have jobs out here. I commute sometimes 2.5 hours one way, 3 or 4 times a week, if I leave at the wrong time and get unlucky with an accident. So this is I'll say it's a flawed document, not because of the work that staff has done, but because of the goals it's trying to help. I mentioned earlier, builders are not going to build the products for the very low and low income. We have a great inclusionary policy around affordable housing. I'm supportive of that. 13% won't solve the problem. It needs to be higher, but it's also almost an impossibility. Residents don't want increased density, but that's what we're going to get. There are reasons that we can deny applications for housing. There's 4 reasons. One of them is safety, and I would argue that more cars on the road equals less safe roads. I saw an overturned accident on Vasco today. That happens more and more. So the challenge with this that I have with this, and I appreciate the caller's comments, is that as a planning commissioner, I'm appointed, I'm not elected, right? And so what I don't want to do as a planning commissioner is put the city in the crosshairs of the state directly. I think that's really a decision for city council, because they answer to the voters, we answer to them. I obviously don't like this. I don't like the premise. I don't like the policy. I think it's on bad data, but it is probably the best that we're going to get. And the option is the builder's remedy, which also is I've heard referred to as the nuclear option, which is worse, and we would have less control than what we would already have if this is passed by both us as well as city council. So I understand the frustration. I voiced it and will continue to voice it. And I've said many times up here, elections have consequences. Yet we continue, and people pay attention to other things, but they don't pay attention to issues like this. And this actually has tremendous impact on what happens to people who live in Brentwood and the surrounding areas. And yet there's very little attention on this issue. And it's up to our elected officials to really elevate this. And I know some are trying, but this is the issue of our time for Brentwood, in my opinion, because if we continue to build homes and increase density, we already have an overcrowding issue with schools. We don't necessarily have enough medical out here. So I can go on, but I think you all get where I'm going with it, and I think we're stuck, right? We have to either pass this, which is bad, or we can reject it, which is also bad. So if given 2 bad choices, I think what I would suggest is that we have to pass it on to the city council, who is elected, and where if the city or if the state decides to go after a city, has to fund the legal defense of the city for fighting this, because someone's going to fight it and someone's going to win. I don't know who win. I personally am up for the fight, but I'm not elected, I'm appointed. That's all.
Commissioner Brand?
A lot of wise words this evening, all around. Vice Chair Sparling is very accurate. The one-size-fits-all is not congruent with, I think, Brentwood's goals, and also saying that we are an appointed board. We are not elected, and yes, elections do have consequences. I'd like to say that myself as well. Yeah, what does this come down to? It's a game of chicken with the state of California. And are we going to sit in the back seat, or are we going to sit in the driver's seat? That's our recommendation today. Who's going to be the bulwark potentially to provide a meaningful rebuttal to this type of one size fits all approach? There are components to this housing element that I believe work, and a lot of which I don't believe does whatsoever. And to see this being given to us and to provide a recommendation, yeah, it's it's a difficult meal to digest.
Mhm.
And so I see these types of requirements that are going to put the greatest strain potentially on individual citizens, particularly in Brentwood, and are not considered as far as the big picture of when we go to the ballot box. So I think we've all sort of commented similar vein, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm more interested, if you want to get real specific about having a reason. We got 402 earmarked for low income. And I'm just trying to figure out, which is what I'd like staff to help me understand, how do you enforce that when a developer comes in with his application? He's got a percentage attached to the bigger picture, which are the higher elements. When are we going to, is there a drop dead date? Is there, I mean, I know we've got this from now into 2031, I believe it is. So what, we're gonna wait till 2030 to build out 80% of the low income? I don't find that there needs to be something in place that forces a developer who, by all means, this is for the developer, to begin to scale and address that number. Because if that number is not something that we can enforce, or is something that we've just put on paper, we're kind of enabling them to come in and kind of, I wouldn't say nickel and dime, but at the end of the day, I don't see how you're going to get 402 low income. And then what does that look like, low income? Is that at the 800,000 marker? Is that at the 200,000? I think that there was someone that came before us once, and I think it was somewhere around 285 or 300,000 as low. But that was 2 years ago. That was before all of this was put in place. So that would be something that I'd like more of a discussion on. So how do we get to the 402? I know. And it's not your fault, Jennifer. We're not, I mean, this is not coming at you. We think that you guys have done an amazing job because you've gone back and forth a lot. You and your team have really put a plethora of paper together, and for that, we appreciate it. But I think the commission has communicated very eloquently that, and the mayor said something earlier today when he swore us in, that we're here to protect those that will be coming in for the next 50 years. What we do today is going to reflect upon the future of Brentwood. Mm-hmm. And I take that very seriously. So this is contrary to that, and my belief anyway. And I kind of got our hands tied up here. So if someone needs a reason as to why we're feeling, at least the way I'm feeling, I need to know when the 402 is going to kick in.
Yeah, so the housing element overall is a document that analyzes the city's current zoning. It analyzes whether we have the capacity to build these units. It also analyzes constraints, both governmental, economic, outside constraints, and whether there are any undue constraints that would prevent, in perfect economic conditions, these units from being developed at these levels of affordability. We have demonstrated, we believe that we've demonstrated within the housing element that under perfect conditions, whether that will ever happen can or may be achieved, not that they will be achieved. And the city is not responsible for constructing these units. We are responsible for providing an environment in which we do not place undue constraints on developers who may want to develop these. But we are not on the hook for constructing them ourselves or financing them or getting mortgages for them or any other outside constraints that may be part of today's economic environment. This document simply is analyzing all of the different constraints and analyzing our zoning and our density ranges and our housing types that we allow in those density ranges to show that it potentially could be feasible to construct those units, but not that those units will necessarily be constructed at the numbers that are shown here.
I appreciate that truth. Appreciate it. Any more discussion?
Yeah,
Commissioner Floyd?
thank you. You know what? This is just an audacious suggestion. I don't know if there's any practicality to it, but I just want to put it out there and maybe it is something we can do. I'm looking at the findings. It's page 86. It says page 86 of 816 in the packet, 87 in the PDF. But, you know, where it starts out, now therefore it be resolved, Planning Commission, including the oral blah, blah, blah. One finds that I would get rid of all of the findings and just have one. And I would say the Planning Commission finds that it is necessary to do this to protect the citizens and the businesses and all of Brentwood, the city of Brentwood, from draconian state measures that will be imposed upon us if we fail to do this task. And if we can put that as a finding, then I would be happy to support that.
Through the chair. So we do have findings that are required by the general plan for amendments to that plan. And the findings that you had referenced, take those into account. Staff had been keeping track of your earlier statements, Commissioner Floor. And April, if you want to share my screen. If you're going to potentially choose to recommend that the city council not approve this, you need to include findings that actually speak to those required findings. So in that spirit, you had gone through that very first finding about the amendment being in the public interest and voiced your determination that it might not be in the public interest. And staff had noted that down. I don't know if that's legible in the size.
If I may, we'd like to take a 15-minute recess, 10-minute recess at this time. Yeah, I need a break.
That's the commission's pleasure.
Okay, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're back. And just before the break, I think Commissioner Floyd was having a discussion with council about some wording, possible wording on a finding. So where are we with that?
Should we put it back up on the screen? Yeah, there we go. I find myself feeling more agreeable to this wording than the original wording, and so I'm curious if we should go through and at least take the time to look at it and discuss whether or not we might find this alternative preferable to the original wording. I'm sorry, to the original wording. I'm trailing off.
And just for the commission's information, this first subsection A is the first finding, which is what Commissioner Floor had addressed in his comments earlier. And then 3 through 5, as I scroll down, would be your actual recommendations to the city council. So I'll pause here for your consideration of A, and then move on 3 through 5 at your direction.
Commissioner Spaulding?
I'm comfortable with A as it meets my general displeasure with what's happening.
Commissioner Brandt?
Vice Chair Sparley, I know you had mentioned the term safety with respect to excess commuting. Do you think that would be applicable here, or are you amenable to just the as is read now?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't, I guess the way it's worded, it mentions excessive commuting, but I think actually it would, I don't know if it makes sense to make the statement increase excessive commuting. Good catch, Commissioner Brandt. Because 100% it will, right? As the population grows in East County, it's not just us, it's Antioch, right? It's a regional problem. Jobs, affordable, or jobs that match the home prices in East County, Brentwood, Antioch, Pittsburgh, Oakley, right, do not support necessarily the type of homes that are being built specifically in Brentwood. So, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Jeff.
So let me just ask a question to make sure I understand the process that we will go through. This will go through to the city council, and I understand why we need to vote for this. So when we put this wording in here, is this just so that they know our sentiment, or would they just get it and take it out and just pass it anyway? I just want to understand, I want to better understand what's going to happen as this, saying, hey, we don't recommend it. Are they just going to go, oh, that's nice, and then they're going to vote yay anyway? Or is this just so we can put it in writing? I just want to make sure I understand why I'm doing this.
Well, it's kind of twofold. One, we need to clarify a little bit with staff as to why it is we are saying what we're saying. And then this will go on to council, and council will read our comments. They take our comments very seriously. And they will either agree with our comments, they might add more into our comments, or they might try to find a resolve at that time with our comments. They might have their own comments to add on to this as well. So it's not something that they are looking at and saying, okay, they will do the analysis based on what we say here.
But if they say no, if they were to vote this down, we get into this quandary of.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No? Okay.
I mean, is there something you would, go ahead, counsel.
I'm just trying to understand this.
Through the chair, yes, thank you for the question. So the Planning Commission is an advisory body to the city council in this matter, this being a general plan amendment. And in that capacity, the planning commission makes recommendations to the council for the council's consideration, and then the council gets to decide what action they want to pursue.
Okay. Right. I understand.
So they could throw out all of our language and if they wanted to, or they could adopt all of it, or they could do something in between.
Got it.
On really anything that we pass. So the items automatically go to council. Items can be appealed by the applicant, and council can pull any item that we approve or deny.
Mhm.
But in this particular case, because of the state laws and mandates that they have proposed, if the council were to decide that they didn't want to do that, that puts us into the quandary. So we're just basically, we're making these comments to make our,
Yeah, our recommendation is known.
okay.
That's pretty much what we're doing.
If I may.
You may.
The resolution in front of us is a resolution for us. The resolution that will go before the city council will be a resolution for the city council. It'll be drafted by staff with a staff recommendation, which I would anticipate will be a recommendation to pass. And the staff will write language for that resolution. The resolution in front of us, the language that we see is for us to agree with or not agree with. The city council will have their own resolution. Our language is not their language. Is that correct?
That's correct. This essentially documents your determination.
Okay. And while I have the floor, that last sentence in A here, the housing element also incorporates the city's goals. That's in the affirmative. So if people are agreeing that that's true, then also is not the correct word. But if we're not agreeing that last sentence is true, then we need to negate it somehow. Yeah, something like that would probably be.
Okay. Any more discussion on A?
Commissioner Flora, if I captured your sentiment there.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the remaining 3 items here, 3, 4, and 5, are your actual recommendations. The start of this sentence up above is the Planning Commission hereby, and it used to say recommends, the city council did X, Y, and Z, but now would read does not recommend, and so forth.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Very good. And at this point in time, I'd like the Planning Commission to vote on a motion. Well, we've closed public hearing. So at this time, I will entertain a motion based on all that has been written here for this item.
I'll do it. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-005 as documented here tonight with the changes, not recommending the city council adopt a general plan amendment as further detailed in the staff report.
Yes, so with the changes shown on the screen tonight?
Right, with the changes. Okay, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-005 with the changes made on the screen today, not recommending that the city council adopt a general plan amendment.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries. Move on to H3. We will now hear a presentation from Senior Planner Jennifer Hagan on the agenda item H3, which is a public hearing for zoning tax amendment to update the city's density bonus regulation in compliance with the state density bonus law.
Thank you, Chair and members of the commission. If you could please share my screen. Tonight, we're here to consider a municipal code amendment to repeal and replace our local density bonus regulations and reference the state density bonus law, as well as modify our definition for low-income housing households. As background, the state density bonus law was adopted in 1976 to help address California's affordable housing needs. The state law was originally adopted in large part to require local agencies to allow increased density, reduced or modified standards, and development incentives based on the number and type of affordable units proposed. Over time, the law was expanded to, among other things, include housing for households at a wider range of income levels with specialized needs. The city's local density bonus ordinance was then adopted in 1989 and amended in 2015 as part of the last housing element update. Since 2015, there have been numerous updates to the state density bonus law that have resulted in the city's current ordinance being out of compliance. As a result, staff is proposing the changes that are being presented to you tonight. In addition to the state density bonus law, we are proposing to modify the city's affordable housing ordinance. The ordinance was originally adopted in 2003 as a mechanism to require affordable housing within all new residential projects. Since 2003, there have been numerous updates to the city's affordable housing ordinance, most recently in 2022 to increase the percentage and distribution of affordable units per project, requiring a total of 13% of all residential projects over 5 units be affordable at various levels shown here in the graph. Based on the City Council's direction in 2022, staff is proposing to provide clarity to the current definition of low-income households. For your consideration tonight, staff is proposing to repeal and replace the existing density bonus regulations. The new regulations would adopt a state density bonus law by reference and identify when regulations would apply. The draft ordinance also contains requirements outlining application requirements and specifies the approval process for projects. In future years, as the legislature continues to amend and/or refine the state law, the proposed ordinance would ensure that the Brentwood Municipal Code will remain consistent with the law and that no additional updates to the city ordinance would be necessary to ensure compliance. Staff is also recommending modifying the existing municipal code definition for low-income households, as shown on the bottom here. As currently written, the definition sets an upper limit on household income for low-income households, which is 80% of the area median income. The current definition, however, does not set a lower income limit. This unintentionally allows for units designed for very low-income households, which typically make less than 50% of the median income, to also qualify for low-income households. This change would help to reinforce the intent of the Affordable Housing Ordinance, which is to require the construction of housing affordable to specified income ranges, and thereby increasing the variety of housing available within the city. In conclusion, the proposed ordinance amendments, if adopted, will provide greater clarity while processing applications and communicating the relevant regulations to applicants, the public, and the appointed and elected officials, which in turn will help to provide additional housing at various income levels and improve the livability and housing options throughout the city. With that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution, recommending that the City Council adopt the ordinance to amend Municipal Code Section 17.720 of our density bonus program to implement the state law, as well as modifying Section 17.725.002, the definition section of the city's affordable housing ordinance to modify the definition of low-income households. And with that, that concludes staff's report, and I am available to answer any questions.
Through the chair.
Yes, please.
So I'd asked an earlier question about, I know we like to talk about percentages of all that, but percentages, I'd like to get the actual dollar amounts for the county that we're looking at, if you've had time to take a look at that.
Okay, if you'd like to share my screen. This is from our city's website. So currently this screen here indicates the sales price, the maximum affordable sales price for sale units at the bottom down here. It has 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, and 5 bedroom units, all listed for the very low, low, and moderate income. So for example, 4 bedroom units, 3 and 4 bedroom is typically what we're seeing. So a very low income unit for sale at very low would be between 139 and 145 units, depending if it's 145,000, depending if it's 3 or 4. Low would be between 500 or 252,000 and 267,000. And a moderate 3 or 4 bedroom would be between 579,000 and 621,000. These are for sale units. And on the second page, it talks about rental prices, the maximum affordable rental prices if you have an apartment complex. So again, if you go to 3 bedroom and 4 bedroom at a very low, your rent would be between $1,699 and $1,812. For low income, it would be between $2,069 and $2,212. And at a moderate income, it would be between 3,918 and 4,209.
Can you scroll back to the actual income? Up the page, just
yes.
up back. Yeah, the first. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is what would qualify a person. If you have, depending on how many people in your household size, these are what your maximum income, annual incomes could be to qualify.
Okay. And do we have an idea of what the average rent is in Brentwood for a 1-bedroom apartment?
That I do not know.
$3,800.
So that, so I don't want to name the actual apartment complex I looked at, right? It's not a clarifying question. Forget it. We'll go, I'll be good.
Real quick, just to follow up, is this gross or AGI? Might be a silly question, but just for context.
Yeah, I don't see, so I'm not sure if Katie knows.
I'm sorry, we were having a sidebar. Oh, that's a good question. I honestly do not know, and I wouldn't want to state incorrectly. We can look into it, but it doesn't state here, and I don't want to give you an erroneous answer. I would note that it's a little bit further away from the affordable housing ordinance in front of you, but I understand you're seeking to find the qualifying numbers. So we can poke around and see if we can find an answer for that.
Jennifer, just out of curiosity, why is there a lower limit on very low income? Like, if somebody was making 29, wouldn't they still be very low income?
I think these are the maximum numbers here. These are not, it's no lower.
As I read it, it's minimum to maximum. So very low income is 31 to 51, low is 51 to 78. And I would further support that because the low income minimum is $1 more than the very low income maximum. So that's just how I'm interpreting it. So I was just curious why a very low income person has to have a certain income. Is it just because so they could at least afford a $117,000 house, or probably that? The other clarifying question I have is these changes all seem to be changes mainly originating in staff, just to clarify some of the things that were changed because of the new policy adopted by the city council, making a requirement for I think it's 13% affordable. There's nothing in here being imposed on the city. This is just the city saying, We want to just be clear. Is that correct? Or
For the affordable housing, that is correct. For the state density bonus law, we do have a program in here. We have known for quite some time that our current density bonus ordinance is out of compliance with state law. The city has noted that in multiple staff reports and in which we are following state law rather than our zoning ordinance, knowing that we are out of compliance. And one of our programs in our housing element is to modify our zoning ordinance to be in compliance with state law for the density bonus. But the affordable housing modification is just to provide additional clarity.
okay, and the state mandated changes or the changes that we made to comply with the state law. Did we review those? I'm sorry if I missed it, but which of the changes that we're making are in compliance with state law again? Just briefly.
So what we are doing is we're basically just repealing our entire ordinance and just referring straight back to the government code. So as the government code changes, we are not required to modify our ordinance. Some of the areas that are not in compliance is some of our parking requirements. They reduced some of the parking down further than what we had stated in our ordinance. And some of the sliding scales within our ordinance are a little out of date. In addition, the state legislation added a couple more specialized groups, including student housing, veteran housing, and so forth, that our current ordinance did not address.
And so going forward, the city code will just directly go to the state code, and there won't be any possibility of non-compliance. We'll just be complying with whatever the state puts on that.
That is the intent.
All right, thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So if we adopt this procedure, can you go down a little bit to the apartments?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what this is saying is we're encouraging, well, this is just the expense part, but I'm just going back to the density. Will we have an amount? Is there any way to control or advocate for the amount of apartments or no?
So right now, you
Or
mean like
low-income.
apartments compared to single family?
Or single family homes, or is there in that density packet that you have that you proposed? I remember reading that you were going from like 1.5 to 1 parking spot or a point. But other than that, is there anything that's encouraging the development of lower income homes in that density requirement?
Yeah, so nothing in the housing element before you tonight or this will modify any of the zoning or the unit types. Our single family allow for single family, typically higher density allow for multifamily. And so none of that is being changed as part of this. Our affordable housing ordinance is what currently requires the 13%, and none of the required percentages are changing as part of this either. And as far as the density bonus law, it's in compliance with state law, so this is just referring back to it. Some of our housing element programs did try to encourage, it had encouraging language to incentivize and encourage additional affordable housing, and had policies to look into potential future incentives to further, to provide additional housing at affordable levels, but nothing committed it as part of the housing element, and nothing in this item before you tonight modifies any of that
So
either.
just to be clear, as Commissioner Flores said, we're basically following the state rules as is all the time. And we can't encourage anything above those state laws. Like we can't do anything that would enhance more income homes or that correct?
At this time, we're not proposing to encourage anymore. Encouraging additional affordable housing is always a city policy area that, may be reviewed or considered at the city council level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time,
I'm sorry, I had a chance to just verify. These numbers do represent gross income levels as reflected in Title II of the California Code of Regulations.
thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up for public hearing.
Through the chair, I have no cards in person. Let's go to Zoom. I have Danny Dorman.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's the last lap. I understand everyone's frustration. Maybe it's me and what I don't understand with respect to what it is you're being asked to do versus is this the right thing to do? One of you asked Katie, it should have been a very easy yes or no answer, and it didn't seem like it was clear. I'm trying to remember the question specifically, but I believe the question was asked. Oh, I forgot what the question was asked, and so please excuse me. But it seems like there's a trend where you you really don't get a yes or a no answer, and I'm hoping that whoever asked the question after this re-ask it because it was implied that there was no recourse and it wasn't a definitive. That's what I've been hearing all night. And I'm not trying to point fingers. I am just truly dismayed that there is an opportunity here to let our voices be heard. Your group, you are appointed by the council, but your role is to make sure that this city it matches what we all envision, the jewel of East Contra Costa County. That recommendation, if you go with the recommendation, you can put in your total disdain and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, staff will read it as you guys approved. I don't recall ever hearing any dissension. I've always heard that planning commission approved and making it seem like you guys were all okay with it. It does not seem like you guys are all okay with it. I think our city would support you if you were, honestly, I would say if you were to reject it and just see what happens. As a alternative, I think it's fair to ask for a continuance. There are still open questions that I think each of you have. And I think it's fair to have those questions answered. If not answered now with staff, if they have to come back and provide greater answers so that you have better information to make your decision, that's the way we should go. If that makes the voting an easier thing. Again, I know you have the support of the city behind you. I know that the state will always come in and say, well, if you don't do this, we're going to take over. And I'm sitting here listening, and as you debate and speak about how our roles are becoming trivialized, it sounds like the state's going to come in regardless. So why not take a stand? And it's a stand of show us from a legal standpoint, not from an opinion or consensus. Draw us a straight line. That is what this is all about. They want you to repeal something that has been going forward, seems to have been working well, and with no rationale explaining why to repeal. I really, really hope that you will either continue or reject this motion.
The speaker's time has expired. At this time, I have no other hands raised.
Okay, then at this time, I will have a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Are there any more discussion on this item? The commissioners, Commissioner Spaulding.
So I mean, the way I view this one is a little bit different than the previous one we just discussed. This is cleaning up language that is actually supportive for, I think, kind of what we want, right? It's matching the state. This is it's related certainly, but a different issue than the other one, because this is helpful for a lot of things. I look at the, it's interesting to me, the reason why I asked for that, the incomes, right? The income requirements versus the housing price and the rent, and made the comment of the rent in Brentwood, right? A single apartment, I think, was $2,500 in a new place, right? Which is below what is charged for very low. And I think about what many college students who just graduated, maybe they have loans, maybe they don't, they would fall into the very low income with jobs. I work for a Fortune 100 company. People come out with technical backgrounds, and they would probably fall within the very low and low income because it's California. And this is my comment about what the state is asking us to do and how can we get more affordable housing, but yet in a city like Brentwood, builders want to build $800,000 to $1 million plus homes. They're beautiful homes, but it doesn't solve the issue at hand that we want to get. So I think for this one, I'm supportive of cleaning up the language, just because I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's a very different issue than how I think about the housing element versus this.
Commissioner Johnson?
I actually concur with Vice Chairperson Sparling on this issue. We do need, if our current laws are out of date and not compliant with the state, I think we need to get in compliant with the state. And if we were already operating in such a way that we were constantly going back to the state, we need to clean that up as well. So that's how I kind of feel about it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Floyd?
Thank you. Yes, on the affordability, I'm in concurrence that this just seems to be some cleanup. I certainly think that the city council knows their mind on that, and if they see objections that I don't, they'll be very happy to make corrections. As far as removing our density bonus law in favor of just pointing to the state law, this is an elegant solution for it. I just don't feel the need to go through point by point the way that we did the last one, and I just think it's a reasonable approach.
Thank you. Commissioner Brand?
Yeah, more or less agree with what's being discussed so far. I think this clarification, particularly on the income side, is helpful and warranted only because you're not unnecessarily grouping the low and the very low together. Therefore, unfortunately, making it more difficult on the very low side. But, not, seems for the most part a clarifying set of changes. Not wild about the parking ratio changes, but yeah, for the most part, it seems concurrent with what the state is asking of us.
Okay. Well, it's a guidance. It's a reference check for us, and it's put in place for a good reason. Whether it is executable, that's a whole nother, that's something completely different. And I say that because I don't know of any apartments here in the city of Brentwood for $1,800. But, it's something, it's possible. That being said, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay.
First one, I make a motion we accept, let me just read. Make a motion that we accept,
Adopt
where is, I'm just
Resolution
looking for.
24003.
Yeah, there we go. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-03, recommending that the city council adopt an ordinance approving the zoning text amendment as further detailed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now hear a presentation from the planning manager, Eric, on agenda item H4, which is a public hearing for zoning tax amendment to update the city's oil and gas use. Eric Nothanis.
Good evening, Chairperson Roberts and Commissioners. I'm not sure if it's good or bad that you were surprised, but I'll take it as a good sign. I do not have a formal presentation, so you don't need to worry about clicking through a PowerPoint, but I did want to spend a couple minutes just giving you an overview of the item, and then we have other staff here that can answer more detailed and specific questions about it. The item itself has a little bit of history. It goes back to March of 2022 when the council directed staff to come back with an interim moratorium on oil and gas drilling in the city, while at the same time researching and preparing an ordinance to address such uses near sensitive receptors and banning oil and gas drilling in the city. That was followed up in April of that year with the council adopting a 45-day moratorium, and then in May with an extension of the moratorium to effectively be for a one-year period. Last March, prior to expiration of the moratorium, the council extended it for an additional one-year period. Then last May, the commission considered a version of an ordinance that would enact a permanent ban on oil and gas operations in the city. That ordinance was never presented to the council, however, as staff was monitoring the outcome of a California Supreme Court case known as Chevron versus County of Monterey, which was decided last August. Finally, last October, just a few months ago, staff provided an informational update to the council indicating that a revised version of the ordinance, based in part on that Chevron case, would be considered by the Planning Commission for further review and recommendation, which is, of course, is the subject of tonight's public hearing. So currently, oil and gas development is regulated pursuant to Chapter 17.680 of the Municipal Code. To address the court's decision from last August, the proposed revised ordinance focuses narrowly on specific locations in the city where oil and gas development may occur, and primarily does the following three things. Number one, it removes oil and gas development as being conditionally permitted uses in both the PD 17, which is essentially the Garin Ranch area, like Balfour, Brentwood Boulevard, and PD 55 zoning districts. And PD 55 is basically the Scortino Ranch area of Sand Creek and Brentwood Boulevard. Number two, it states that oil and gas development may be permitted or conditionally permitted in a zoning district only if those uses are expressly listed as such. And then 3, it further revises Chapter 17.680 in case a future city council decides to allow oil and gas development in a particular zoning district or districts. It should be noted that there are no active or pending permit applications relating to, and as a result, the ordinance will not have any immediate or anticipated effect on private property or development rights. Staff did analyze the proposed ordinance for compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, known as CEQA, and determined that it is exempt, meaning that there is no additional environmental analysis to be done. In addition, a notice of public hearing was published in the Brentwood Press on January 5th, and staff did not receive any comments on the proposed ordinance. In conclusion, after studying and analyzing the potential economic, health, safety, and community effects of long-term changes to the city's regulation of the location of both oil and gas uses, staff recommends that the commission consider the proposed ordinance and recommend that it be adopted by the council. And as I mentioned early on, just wanted to point out in closing that staff has been working very closely with counsel from Shute, Mahaley, and Weinberger on this proposed ordinance. And we have Aaron Stanton from that firm attending the meeting tonight via Zoom. He's available if the commission has any specific questions about either the recent court case or how the proposed ordinance was drafted. With that, I will turn it back to Chairperson Roberts and the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it up for a public hearing.
I have no speaker cards in person. I do have one hand raised in Zoom. Ian Cohen,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
All right, it's been a while, Planning Commission. Good evening. I know it's a little late. So with this item, I am speaking on behalf, sorry, of No Drilling in Contra Costa. Sorry. No Drilling Contra Costa is the organization with Sunflower Alliance, the Last Chance Alliance, focused on preventing oil and gas drilling in Contra Costa County. The problem is oil and gas drilling was the popular use before Brentwood was really incorporated as a city in the 1980s. And now there is some expressed interest in bringing back the activity to the area, which according to a 2021 Stanford study, within 2.5 miles, there's very severe health risks. So tonight, I highly encourage the Planning Commission to pass this ordinance. It is very similar to what the city of Antioch did last year with no legal troubles. So if city of Antioch's able to do it, city of Brentwood's very able to do it. And we have a team of lawyers who also have been reviewing the state Supreme Court case and reviewed the Antioch one, and we're in full clear. So thank you so much. I cannot wait for this to finally get moving. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have no other hands raised.
Hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any more discussion on this line item? Commissioner Johnson?
Not at this time.
Commissioner Spaulding?
None of this time.
Commissioner Floyd?
Sure. I just want to say that I'm very supportive of this motion. It's been a long time coming. I appreciate the patience in the community. So many of the members of the community that came out to support this through the last year and a half we've been doing it are young people, and they've just been nothing but gracious and understanding and very patient, really gives you hope for the next generation. And I want to appreciate our legal staff for the fine job they've done here. And it just illustrates perfectly for anybody who wants to know, who maybe doesn't understand why we need legal protection at all times, is that this is a constant changing environment that we live in, a legal environment, and there's always court cases going on, and they're keeping up with it and keeping us safe. and doing what needs to be done, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Brandt?
Nothing at this time.
And I have nothing at this time. So with that said, I would like to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 24-004, recommending that City Council adopt an ordinance addressing oil and gas uses as further detailed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No nays? Motion carries. Okay, very good. This time, we're going to move into our informational reports from committees and upcoming meeting schedule. Transplan.
So a couple of brief updates on the recent transportation projects. Really, the most important one is the Monkalumi Trail Connector over Highway 4. We're at 82% completion, so it's supposed to be done by the fall. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. That is major progress. Design review.
We have, as is per usual, no meeting, and I'd like to welcome our new Commissioner, Gerald Johnson, to the Design Review Committee, where I promise you, we will not be working you very hard at all because we hardly ever meet. But it's a good meeting to go to when we have one.
Thought you were roping me in. Everybody looked down this way when every head came straight to me. So, okay.
Oh, boy. You're on one tonight. Okay, and land use and development, we have not met either, so, okay, request for future agenda items. I would like to bring to the commission, we spoke a little bit during Commissioner Ziegler's time here about insurance. Homeowners not being able to, or having difficulty insuring their homes. I'd like to dig a little deeper into that, and that presents a safety issue. And if there's, I know it's new, I think when we spoke last, it was so new that no one really had any data on that. But I would like to know if there's something that we need to know to better understand exactly with all these homes now coming into our network, how many of them are going to have a difficult time being insured and where that might present a safety issue. So it's something that I'd like to put out there.
So just through the chair, is this something that you'd like staff to come back and make some sort of a formal presentation on?
Yeah.
Or is it, okay. Because the other thing is we could do some research and provide the commission with some information via email if that would suffice. And if it doesn't, then we could follow up the presentation. I do know that we're going to be looking at the defensible space issue potentially as part of the permanent objective design standards,
Okay.
which are underway with a consultant firm and staff.
Okay, all right.
So what I might propose is just that we keep the commission updated regarding that process, and the commission's going to be involved to an extent with it anyways. And if that doesn't suffice for whatever reason, we could come back with a more formal item.
I appreciate
presentation. That works?
That works. Okay.
Just a clarifying question for Eric. So when is the objectable standards timeline in terms of coming back to us?
A good question, and I would have asked Jennifer, but she's left the room. It's within the next several months. It's basically first half of this year. I don't have a precise timeline right now, but in the next 4 to 6 months.
Okay. Okay. All right, at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, our next regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for February 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. and will be held here in council chambers.